designed to build cognitive skills of students. At our last meeting, the board was provided with an overview of the intervention and a review of the pilot program we ran this past summer. Paula took a look at the data to ensure that the information that was provided by Scientific Learning was accurate. She also did some comparisons on student gains and explained to the board that the metrics used by the company correlated well with some of the metrics we use, like the MAC testing. Since then, I asked Paula to go back and look over this again, to dig deep, to let me know if there's any reason to doubt the data. You've all seen the independent research reports and the reports that are provided by the company as well as others, but we really want to know what the data say. So I've asked Paula to come back tonight to share with you what follow-up she's made, take some comments from Mike and Dwayne who led this effort, and then I'd like to finish up with some other statements.
I took a look at a couple of things just from the fast forward data themselves, and then I also tried to look for corroborating evidence from other measures that we have available. The first thing I looked at was I was curious whether we know that there was there was varied success among the students in the pilot. There were some students that gained, and there were some students who didn't make gains. And I was wondering if all of the gains came from students who were already at or above grade level, because we saw that in our pilot there were a number of students who started out at or above grade level. So I looked at where they were at the beginning of, based on their RPI score, where they were at the beginning of the pilot, and divided them roughly into these four categories. So they were roughly equal. There was a group of students who were 2 or more grades below in terms of their grade equivalent as measured by the RPI. There was a group that was 1 to 2 grades lower, a group that was below but up to a grade lower, and then there was a group that was above. I didn't want to find out that all of the gains had come in the purple group on the right, but we were just helping the kids who were already kind of get farther ahead. And it turns out that the amount of growth that they made was about the same no matter what group they were in. On average, around a year's worth of growth, no matter which group of students we were looking at. One of the questions that you all had asked when we presented the data before was whether or not there was a difference in their growth based on their attendance. That was one of the pieces of information that Scientific Learning provided to us, was a percentage attendance. And you can see that there's not much relationship there, that it didn't seem to make, it could be that the students were all sort of closely packed in terms of their attendance, and there wasn't really, so we didn't have anybody who was really low or anybody, any group of students who were really high. The change they saw in their RPI score did not seem to be associated with their attendance. Not exactly what we would expect to find, but that's what the data shows. So that was the extent of what I looked at, just based on the data that they provided for us, and from there I went on to look at whether or not our other information that we have for our students, math scores, individual scores, and so on, tracked with what they were saying. The first thing I looked at, they have a study that they've run that showed that the RPI score and grit scores were pretty highly correlated, so I looked to see if that was true of our students as well. And there is indeed a pretty high correlation. Not quite as high as the one they saw, but we have a really small sample compared to theirs. We had 62 students and they had 1,500 students.
And our
it does appear
rocky.
Pardon me?
And our implementation is rocky.
Well, it's still, the question is whether or not the score is measuring, they seem to be measuring something that's appears to be the case. It's never going to be exactly true. So then what I wanted to look at was to see whether or not the students who posted gains from Fast Forward also gained in RIP points. We don't have a lot of students here. We have 61 who had spring RIP scores and fall RIP scores, and we're also, so this is, there were 86 students in the pilot, 62 of them students who were old enough to have taken the math tests in the spring. So these are the current 3rd through 8th graders. Those are the students who had math scores from the spring. So overall, we had about 70% of the students, the eligible students from the pilot, who made gains over the course of the pilot, and we had, of those students, of all of those students, there were only about 60% of the students who actually saw improvements in their RIT score. Now, one of we're looking to see, so that the upper left corner and the lower right corner, not in the total cells around the edges, but in the body of the table, those are students for whom there was the same result in both tests. Either they improved or they didn't improve. So we had 28 out of 61 students who improved in RPI and also improved their RIT score. And we had 11 students who did not improve their RPI score over the course of the pilot and also did not improve their RIT score from spring to fall. The one reason why the percentages, why we may not have seen quite as much, quite as many students in the improved RIT score, if you'll recall that the math tests take place in the first few days of school, and the RPI scores were calculated at the very end of October, so students had more opportunity for growth in the measure that was used in the pilot study before we tested them in Fast Forward. If we had a MAP score from the end of October, it's possible that we would have had a percentage of students that improved, that matched what we saw in the Fast Forward pilot. So it seems to be approximately the same. I did look at the correlation or plotted the amount of growth in RIT score with the amount of growth in the RPI score, and it was all over the place. So on average, things look pretty good, but it's not necessarily true that the kids who made big gains in RPIs were also the kids who made big gains in the RIT score. So I also wanted to look at what would have been the best information to have would have been to have a control group, like our pilot group, for whom we could compare the results and say, here are the students who participated in the pilot, and here's what and here is the gain that they made, and here is a group of students who were just like that and didn't have the advantage of going through Fast Forward, and here's what happened to them. So we don't have a control group. And so I thought the next best thing that we could do would be to compare the students, compare on one characteristic at a time, the results of the students who participated in the pilot with the results for students with that same characteristic who did not participate in the pilot. So if you look at, so all the no pilot group are all much larger because we had many more students who weren't in this pilot group than were not. And what you see is that overall, we have a little summer loss going on here, that our averages for just about every group that we looked at for the students who weren't in the pilot, their fall RIT score is up to about 1 point lower than their spring RIT score. On the other hand, when we look at our pilot students, and the numbers are very small, so I'd be hard for us to say that there's super good news here or anything, but you do see that In almost every case, the average RIT scores for the students in the pilot group at worst stayed the same, and in some cases they went up. You can see for Title I students that there was actually quite a large improvement, where that was the group for whom there was the largest decrease among the students who were not involved in the pilot. One place where that sort of conclusion about the pilot students not performing better than the ones not in the pilot was the students with IEPs. Again, these are all small samples. Those students saw a decrease in their risk for the non-pilot students and the pilot students.
Just a comment on that, the time lag for special education, those students that were extended school year, that was 3 weeks. The focus was on regression and improvement of skills. Now there was a time lag when those students went back to school and actually got back in the program. It was over 6 weeks, and for a special education student, that's half a year. And it's been a case to be half a year in terms of losing skill and development. So, looking at that, and also the number of students in special ed who went to extended school year, were the students who, based upon the IEPs, are more of our students who need those interventions throughout the course of the year, whereas some of the other special ed students who are not in the extended school year, in terms of regression, and it actually indicates that it's not that much regression happens after summer school, whereas those other kids, they need that extended school year to prevent further regression in terms of those skills. So that could explain why there's a year or a point difference versus 0.7 with the regular special ed students. We're looking at the more severe cases in terms of special ed students for extended school year.
So that's about all the information that we can pull out of MAP scores and so on. It's not a really strong result, but it does appear to show that the pilot students saw some improvement that wasn't gained by the students who did not participate in the pilot. For our first and second graders, we don't have MAP scores, we don't have DIBELS. It's really harder to look at because it's completely different kinds of information. But we do have the way DIBELS works. They're very short assessments that are given, and they tend to be they're numerical. How many letters can a student name in a minute? How many words can they read without error in a minute, and so on. For first graders, there's an assessment that they take for kindergartners, or for students who are in first grade now. There is an assessment that they took at the end of kindergarten that they take again right at the beginning of first grade. It's the letter naming fluency test. They see a page of mixed upper and lowercase letters, and then their scores the number of letters they can name correctly within 1 minute. So it's the same task at both points in time, and so it seemed fair to look at the average change in the number of letters that they could name. And these numbers are very small. This is only our first and second graders who see. Well, first graders, there are only 8 of them. Half of them were able to name more letters in the fall than they did in the spring, but only slightly more than a third of our first graders in general were able to name more letters in the fall than they did in the spring. And you can see the average change. The average change appears that the pilot students do better as well. Second graders have taken oral reading fluency assessment in the spring of first grade, and then again in the fall, so it's a very similar thing. There are 14 students in that category, and again, it turned out that half of them were able to got a higher score in the fall than in the spring, and very similar results to what we saw for the first graders. So it does appear from this that the students who participated in the pilot met with greater success on these two independent measures that compared to second grade students. You can see why I didn't bother to look at the first and second graders in terms of efficacy, just audits or anything like that.
Well, since you said that, is that really even a legitimate number to look at when they're that small?
You know, what we wanted to do is take the most critical look we could at the numbers. For those who don't believe the stats that we see, that we look at in the independent studies, and don't believe the success that some schools have had with this program. So I asked Paul to go out there and take a look very critically on the less than ideal implementation strategy to try to poke holes in, are we going to get some success with this program? And so the numbers aren't such that I would say they statistically stand in any way, shape, or form, but they at least are our numbers, and at least our kids, and at least we're getting a feel for what we've done in a very short period of time in our district. At present, Glenn, do you want to add something before At present, we don't have a tool in our teachers' arsenal, if you will, that really addresses in as organized or systemic fashion as this cognitive skills, memory, attention, perception, sequencing. We have extraordinary teachers that attempt to get at those in their own ways. I don't want to belittle at all those kinds of efforts. We don't have a program that has it, nor have we found a way, again, despite, I think, really intensive work on the part of our staff, a way to lessen the need, perhaps, for some lifers in terms of remediation. The need to place youngsters, our special ed numbers are still high. The brain research studies have found that cognitive skill development can assist students in processing information faster and more rapidly, faster and more accurately, and helping students of all abilities, frankly, to adapt to a fast-changing world. You know, we keep adding, we've talked with our teachers about adding curriculum on the plate all the time and how things are changing. We are looking to purchase the program because it has the potential to provide some long-lasting impact for our students and help us avoid unnecessary, I want to emphasize that, unnecessary remediation. We're always going to have some remediation, but unnecessary remediation. And we're looking at it in terms of whether it would be a return on investment for us from both the dollar sense, as Mike and I worked up some numbers today, if we cut in any significant pathway into remediation programs and special ed programs, that's significant. Each child that we assess for special ed, just the assessment part, before we even put them in the classroom, runs the district anywhere between $2,000 and $2,500.
And we average on a yearly basis initial case studies around 34 to 35 initial students into special education. If we were to cut that back in half a year, or even 5 a year, eventually it would make a major impact. And then you're talking about the evaluations of students, just the initial evaluation, doing the IEP meeting, placement in special education based upon a special ed classroom, whether it would be instructional, whether it would be resource. You're talking an additional $10,000 to $20,000 a year for that student in terms of education. So the long-term effect, if some of these students went through the program, were not eligible or were not able to be eligible for special ed because, again, working with the brain, functioning in those auditory processing needs, comprehension skills, fluency, prevent them from coming to special ed in the long run, could eventually pay for itself.
We're guesstimating, it's purely a guesstimate on our part. We don't have a scientific formula in front of you, but as we were talking about the number of kids that we have in special classes now, including our remediation classes that are non-classified classes, we think in a 3-4 year period that the program can pay for itself because you purchase it and it's yours to do as you please. So let me we focus a little too much, I think, in this day and age and in our job performance on the dollar part. That's the dollar return on investment. What I'm really looking for is a learning return on investment. And this is a program that if we use the 30-minute protocol is somewhere in the neighborhood of 13 weeks. It's not a forever program for youngsters. They go through the program. We've proven with the pilot that many, if not most, if not all, youngsters can improve in that time period. In the long run, giving staff, I think, some time with their students, because if you think about it from that vantage point, narrowing the gap and raising the bar, providing teachers with less range in their classrooms, giving them youngsters who come to class more focused, more attentive, information easily provided to the teachers through the reports that we shared with you, we think could be a boon for our teachers as well. The implementation plan is yet to be developed. Frankly, we've had concerns. We've talked to our staff members about those concerns, and we want to take staff members' concerns into consideration when we develop an implementation plan. A good implementation plan, in my way of thinking, would include not only fidelity to the profile that we established for the youngsters, but how can that work to the teacher's benefit so that, again, their job in a very complex world right now gets a little bit easier, and or they have some time to really digest the information that is often thrown at them. The nice part about this program is it can be used in a variety of models. One of the models might actually free up time for teachers. We haven't decided on any particular model yet. This is not a replacement program, but it is likely an intervention that, if and when we have success with it, might lead to less need for some of the interventions that we presently have in place that we pay for in large sums year after year after year. And the concept of cognitive development is, if you get it right, the need for ongoing lifetime remediation is diminished. The cost of the program is $477,000 for all 10 schools. It's a one-time purchase. If we purchase the material, the support part, the updating, it's a software program, the updating, and the kind of support that we get in the terms of the reports that the board reviewed last week is $4,500 aside a year. So there is that kind of commitment. We don't see in any of the implementation plans that the principals have kind of played with in the last week or two, we do not see a very big staff impact. Right? An aid here or there. We don't see this as being personnel heavy. And the last thing I wanted to share is that if we had the subgroups that we worry about most in our AYP programs performing even in the way that we performed on the pilot, the kind of angst that we're going through on AYP and planning could be set aside somewhat for what we really want to do, what we really want our teachers focusing on, and that's learning, not test scores. And the nice part about this is if the youngsters really do develop those cognitive skills, it fosters learning not just in reading. It's not a reading program. It fosters learning across the board. So next, at our next board meeting, I am going to make a recommendation that the board purchase this material. We will develop with our teachers and with the company an implementation plan that fits. We have, as an administrative team, talked about doing that in a dual fashion. Some of our principals would like to try a response to intervention approach, where and it could be, by the way, that could be before, after, or during the school day with this program, again, since we own it, but where we would identify youngsters that would benefit most from the program, move them through it as a first step in any intervention beyond the classroom. So the teachers tried several things with a youngster is still having that youngster struggle, the student might be assigned to fast forward class for the 13-week period. The other model is a number of our schools are interested in doing that at a grade level across the board, with the premise that we believe that cognitive skill development, 13 weeks to 30 minutes, more than offsets itself in the benefits that the kids will come back to the regular classroom with after that time period. We'd like to consider at this point in time addressing both of those for the rest of this year and come back to the board with what kind of results we have, and then come back with a more unified approach across the district after we collect additional data. We have the latitude to do that if we so desire, because we own the program and can use it in any fashion we want. None of the implementation strategies have been decided on at this time. Those are the kinds of things I want to give the board a full flavor. Those are the kinds of things that the administrators have been discussing.
Okay. Thank you. Good update. Good. This is definitely something